knows what's going on, even though I don't talk much about it. So it was really, it was great for my wife to go through, and it was great for us kind of to we had done already. I will say, Brian, I'll toot his horn a little bit. Very easy to talk to. My wife was very impressed after our first meeting of how he just made us feel comfortable, made her feel comfortable, and made us understand, and probably more her understand what we were talking about. I think we had 4 meetings, Brian, if I'm correct, 3 or 4, I can't remember what it was. And each meeting was more informative. He told us what we needed at each meeting. We had a little homework to do. My wife actually enjoyed doing that. It got her to understand us more. And it really got me to understand what she was wanting to do when a time of either retirement or passing of myself and her, and was excited about it. And my wife was very happy that we were able to do this. It's something that she doesn't like to talk about, but those 3 or 4 meetings made her really feel more comfortable about talking about things like that. So we were, again, we reviewed our documents. We were very excited about what he told us we could do that I didn't have. And so it was an eye opener for me. So, I mean, that's kind of what I can tell you what we had, and my wife really enjoyed it. And again, I told Brian before, but I'll do it again. Thank you for being easy to talk to, honestly.
Thank you.
I was also fortunate enough to go through the process, and really what piqued my interest was learning or finding out a little bit more about it so I could talk to some of my clients and see if it was something that they should go through. But having gone through the process myself, I found out also a lot more about myself, about my wife, and what we wanted to have happen, in scenarios that should we have an unfortunate event, whether that be death or disability, those types of things. My wife doesn't like to talk about it a lot, but I did get a better understanding of where she was coming from and what our options were. Brian brought up a lot of great points, especially on the tax front, that you may not be aware of. So I would recommend that everybody that is affiliated with MHP Foundation, or just has any general interest to do so. There is no obligation to make a donation to MHP Foundation. There's no obligation to put any charity in your estate plan. There are discussions around that, but that is not the focal point of what you have to accomplish through this. Brian is very open to listening to what your goals are to tailor that conversation around you. And so I appreciate that. I even led my dad and my father-in-law, and then of course their situation, significant others, to these conversations so that they could at least put their ducks in a row. And it was helpful since it had been quite a few years since they had reviewed, living wills and trusts and, estate documents. Brian's got a very good eye for that. So again, Brian, I appreciate it. And thanks for all you did for me and my wife.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bo.
Thanks, you guys. I appreciate that. It was nice to hear those things. So let's go ahead and let Brian get started. I have his presentation here on my computer. I'm going to share my screen so everybody cross their fingers. I think it'll work. And Brian will give me a signal when it's time to change the slides. But do you want to say anything before you get started, Brian?
Well, I'd say thanks to Brent and Bo for those kind words, and it has been fun. I guess we're going on a little over 3 years of working with families in Shelbyville, and it's just been. I grew up in Franklin, so I'll let everybody on the call know that. So I'm familiar with the area, and worked in Indianapolis for a number of years. I'm sitting in Louisville, Kentucky now. I've been down here about 20 years, so kind of joke. I don't know if I'm a Hoosier or a Kentuckian, but I still kind of call getting back to Franklin, Shelbyville areas. That's kind of home. So it's been great to work with the Hospital Foundation, and look forward to tonight. This is my first virtual Zoom call especially when you add in the wine and the cheese. So
ready?
Yes. Yeah.
Here we go. Oh, share. from beginning. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, Angela.
You're welcome.
Angela mentioned, and the idea here is this is a fun event. We do want to, throw out a few educational things and really just let you know about this program that we've got as a service at the hospital. Thompson and Associates, the name you see right here, we're an estate planning firm. They're based in Nashville, Tennessee, do a lot of work with healthcare organizations and universities. Major Hospital's been a great client and partner of us for the last three and a half years. And I think we've had about 40-ish families go through the planning now. So tonight is really just an introduction to that. If there are specific questions or things that you have in mind, I'm happy to be a resource. We've got other financial advisors on the call as well that are very well or maybe more qualified in certain areas. I do, maybe to make that distinction, I usually like to start by letting people know what we don't do. We don't sell any type of products when we go through this process. We're not in the insurance business or investment business. We don't draft legal documents. We don't do tax returns. We're not fundraisers. And so usually people are thinking, okay, well, what do you do? We're planners. And at the end of the day, we're trying to just bring our best advice and thoughts to the estate planning process. And Angela, I'll let you kind of hit the next screen there. And this is a quote from Eddie Thompson, who started the company probably about 25 years ago, that I think just is something to think about and sets a framework for this, that your estate plan is the single greatest financial impact you can have on your family and the largest financial transfer you will ever control. Planning for this transfer can be profoundly liberating and positive when it breathes life and possibility into the future. And I think for a lot of people, it is a topic, even as Brent and Bo were talking about it, it's not a fun topic. We're kind of talking about what can go wrong when life throws you a curveball type planning. But the state of Indiana has an estate plan for you. And the idea of, taking control of your plan is what we try to do. And we're going to talk about in this next slide here, a concept that we come back to a lot, that everything that you have at the end of the day is going to go into one of three buckets. Either it's going to go to your heirs, your children, your grandchildren, whoever you might name, the government, or to charity. And the planning that we're doing in this process is really just helping people understand that when it comes to taxes and charity, you have a choice. And so looking at planning through that lens, we want to obviously make sure in any planning recommendations that we share as we go through the planning process that the children, grandchildren, family members, important people are taken care of. That's foundational. But if there are things that we can do through proper planning and direct money away from Uncle Sam into local charities in the Shelbyville area, for us, that's a win. And that's how we bring everything back to that as a measuring stick. I think I've only had one person in all the years I've been doing this say that they wanted to benefit the government. And it was somebody I met in a Shelbyville meeting, and he was not from Shelbyville. He was actually from the country of Georgia. At first he said he was from Georgia, and I'm thinking, but it was actually the country of Georgia. And his point was he wanted to direct the money to the military and for roads. And I thought, that's okay. That makes a lot of sense. The problem with the way our tax system is set up is you don't get to pick and choose, where those dollars go. So, again, we'll meet you where you're at. But the idea is that everything's going to go into one of these three buckets. All right, Angela. This statistic, I need to check this because I thought that the numbers were actually a little bit higher, but we recently redid this presentation, and this is what I got. But the idea that a lot of people just don't like to talk about this and die without a will, I think the number may even be a little bit higher from my experience, but on average, 1 out of 2 people have not done this type of planning. And interestingly, in these COVID days that we're living in early March, actually through March and into April, the number one trending item on Google was how to write your will and how to do your estate plan. And so, you throw a pandemic at people and they want to Google how to do their will. The other thing that I sometimes see is, if a couple's getting ready to, for whatever reason, take a trip to Europe and they're flying over a big body of water, they kind of want to get their estate in order. That tends to be another trigger for people. But the idea of doing a plan is what we're trying to get at here, and that you've got a plan if you don't do anything, but is that what you really want? So planning effectively. And what I'm trying to do here with this tonight is just give you just an overview of the process, maybe hit on a couple planning ideas. So hopefully you leave learning something. And I tried to put those slides up front before people drank too much wine so we could, hopefully you remember it. The effective plans require, where are you at today? Where do you want to go? We look at personal issues. A lot of this does get into non-financial discussions. You've got 3 kids, one's great with money, one's horrible with money, and one's married to someone that you don't really, like and don't think it's going to go well. Well, if you die and leave assets to those 3 kids, those are 3 completely different scenarios. And so how do we leave assets to children and grandchildren? What's the best way to do that from a non-financial, just how are they going to manage it perspective, to tax planning perspective. And there's a whole host of techniques that we try to take you through. I use the analogy quite a few times that, I'm coming from Louisville up to Shelbyville. The fastest way for me to get there is I-65 north. And that's the most simple, straightforward way to do that. But there's a whole lot of country roads, gravel roads, even dirt roads that I could get on and probably still eventually find my way to Shelbyville. But it's with a lot of, undue stress and wasted time. So we try, when we make recommendations through this planning process, to keep you on the interstate as much as we can. We want to find the most efficient, low cost, easy to administer solution. And there's some things out there that are just overlooked, quite honestly. And our firm, we do about 1,500 estate plans a year. So we've seen a lot. I think the biggest value that we bring to the process is just that we sit in the catbird seat, and we've seen estates from as little as a couple $100,000 to couple $100 million to over $1 billion. And you can keep adding zeros, but at the end of the day, people are people, and planning issues for families you might get into some more complex things as estates grow, but this planning process doesn't eliminate anybody based on their wealth, I guess is my point. Angela? So what we're trying to help you, I guess, juggle is, everything from income tax to capital gain tax, gift tax, estate tax. Right now, a family can pass, each individual can pass over $11 million per person free of federal estate tax. So a married couple can pass over $22 million free of estate taxes. So for most people that we talk to, federal estate taxes are not the planning issue. Now, I don't have a slide on this. I'll throw it in there, and I'm not getting into all the politics, but there's a distinction between where we're at today and if Biden has put out his tax plan and what he is suggesting for estate taxes and income taxes and capital gain taxes. So these are things to watch. I had a question earlier today in some of our individual meetings that I was doing with the hospital foundation about how often do you review your estate plan? And we always say about every 3 to 5 years, or when there are major life events. If we have an election where House, Senate, White House all flip, and the agenda that's been put out in the public is, pretty much, more onerous on taxes, it just drives the need for more planning. And so something to keep an eye on. I don't know anything about anybody's financial situations on this call, but for most people, if your net worth is less than 22 million, federal estate taxes aren't an issue. Above that, you're going to be a philanthropist one way or another, either involuntary in the form of taxes or voluntary in the form of gifts. And that's where we bring it back to those 3 buckets and just different planning strategies. So, and the other thing, that we do try to stress on, couples as we work through the planning. And some of you have gone through this process, in your 20s, you're thinking about life and disability insurance, you're building a family, and it really is just basic estate planning, wills, powers of attorney, living wills, who's going to be the guardian of our kids. Those are big planning discussions in the 20s and 30s. And then you get into, possibly caring for, your parents' generation or siblings. You're focused on saving for retirement or more in that accumulation phase. Our firm, Brent and Bo, I think, had to run to another meeting, but they're financial planners. They do investing. They do retirement cash flow modeling. They're more focused on that, where what we do is really focus on, when you die, how does our tax system work, and how do assets get passed to those that you love and care about. And so as you move through life, in that generational slide there, you'll see people just start to think about this. They've had, maybe they've experienced the loss of parents or grandparents. They now have parents that are in, long-term care or need extended health care, and they're seeing them spend down their assets. So monitoring your estate plan through life, there's just different things that you look at different phases of life is our theme on that slide. I'm going to maybe pause there. Any questions, Angela, anything you want to add, or any thoughts or comments? I can keep talking. It also gives me an excuse to take a sip of bourbon, since I'm representing Kentucky and not drinking wine tonight. I've got bourbon. All right. Well, let me, we had just a handful of slides here so that hopefully you can make your time well spent this evening, but a lot of people get confused on like the word probate or what is an estate. In simplest terms, the IRS looks at you, and their job description when you pass away is to go out, grab everything that they can find that you own. And there's a difference between ownership and control, and we talk about that in this process. But if you own it, they're going to grab it, put the highest value on it, and run it through our tax system. And so there is, and everything, I should say this up front, I've used the analogy of a tree. The type of planning we do, we try to keep you as close to the trunk as possible. We're not trying to get you real far out on a limb with these real creative, exotic. Last thing we want to do is have you get a tax court case named after you. We don't want that. But this is just basic estate planning strategies that have been around since the 60s that are just overlooked, quite honestly. And so things that make up an estate, your home, your business, real estate, farm, bank accounts, IRAs, 401ks, retirement accounts. Most people are surprised when we gather this data and put it all on one page, what they've accumulated over. They don't feel rich, but when you see this, based on an estate value, people tend to be surprised. So with anything, good planning starts with setting clear goals. We use the term, we highlight values a lot, and we try to slow down the estate planning process. The phrase that we use a lot is, helping people kind of connect their values to their valuables, more the why behind the how, and passing on that type of legacy to heirs beyond just dollars. So we'll talk briefly about that. And I think I may have already touched on this, but yeah, common planning goals: accumulate, build your estate, improve standard of living, maintain it in retirement years. For most people, their biggest fear is, are my assets going to outlive me, or am I going to outlive my assets? That's more retirement income planning, Brent Bow, your financial advisor type planning. Provide for care in the case of disability or extended health care event. Provide for a surviving spouse, and transferring assets to family and other beneficiaries. Some of the common things that we see, and we're seeing more and more, like special needs trust planning, and the idea that if you've got a family member that is receiving governmental benefits, the way that you leave assets to that individual can disqualify them for government benefits. So making sure that we've got an estate plan around that. If you're in a second marriage, there are unique planning strategies that need to be thought about for, if you each have children. If you have kids that are married, I think I kind of highlighted at the beginning, but this idea of asset protection, whether it's because it's a litigious society and you're just worried about getting sued, or it's passing assets to your kids and you might not think that they've got the most stable of marriage. If assets go outright and they get divorced and you're gone, so I guess for some purposes, we can only control so much from the grave, but this idea of keeping it within the family, typically one generation, maybe two generations, it's not hard to do with trust planning. If you get beyond that, it gets a little bit more difficult. I mean, there are dynasty trusts and things that are set up, but just thinking through, everybody's different. And what are the goals? What are the objectives? What are the unique things about your family? There's no perfect family out there. Everybody's got something we're trying to plan for or about. And that's what we try to do in this process. So, we've kind of talked on that. Without proper planning, someone else chooses caretakers in the distribution of your assets. And threats to not having proper planning. Probate is a word. I might touch on that real quick because a lot of times people hear this word probate. I should have had a giveaway or something, Angela, and do a trivia question if anybody could tell me what probate is. We don't have that, so I'll just go and tell you. Probate is simply the process when someone dies, is going to the courthouse, you open up an estate, and it's taking somebody else's name off of assets and putting somebody else's name on assets. That process can take time, it can cost money, and so for some scenarios, people will try to avoid probate. It's also a public process, so if you're a private person, people don't maybe want to have that information out there. And so just thinking through, okay, certain assets go through my probatable estate. Yeah, you can click to the next one there. That's fine. Nope, I think, yeah, I've already kind of touched on that. Let's go to the next one even after that. Okay, so we're going to get in. I'm going to come back to probate. Hold that thought because I'm going to show you a couple just very quick ideas of how we address that. A couple questions that we answer as we go through the process. Do you have enough to live the rest of your life? And then the next question is, that we get asked a lot is, how much should I leave my heirs? What types of assets should I leave my heirs? How should I leave these assets? Should it be in trust or lump sum? One trend that we're seeing probably over the last 5 years, and this is again just Thompson and Associate. Yeah, thank you. Is if you think back maybe a generation, a lot of families left money outright. That was just the default. That you got lump sums, when you die, you left it to your kids outright. And that may still make perfect sense if kids are able to manage money. But we're seeing a trend more towards some outright, some paid out annually through a trust, and some given at lump sums. The interesting thing about the lump sum that I wanted to highlight is this idea that the kind of the American dream that the next generation will always have it better than the previous. I don't know, I'm not old enough to know what was being said, 50 years ago, but what we're hearing is that this may be the first time that this generation thinks that the next generation may not have it as well. And so some of these lump sum distributions that we're seeing are actually from couples in their 70s to kids in their 50s to help them fund their retirement. It's an interesting twist. If that is something that's important to your planning, but for whatever reason, we've started to see a trend in that. So this breakdown of, do you leave assets outright? Do you have annual income streams going to heirs, or do you do lump sums at certain ages? Again, no wrong answer, but we're seeing a lot of our sophisticated, more thoughtful planning moving in this direction than just by default sending it outright. The other thing, and Angela, I'll let you go ahead and click it because I think it's going to put some lines on there. Most people, go back one more. Yeah, so this box, this is where, quite honestly, we spend a lot of our time in planning. if you think about when you die, which assets are taxed at the heaviest tax rates, monies that you have in your IRA, 401k, 403b, annuities, etc., are taxed at ordinary income rates, the highest tax rates. So you put money in pre-tax, it grows without tax. When you die, the IRA, they're going to get you coming or going, either in the form of required distributions at age 72 or at death, there's a final income tax return that your estate will pay. So married couple, first death, everything goes to surviving spouse, not a big issue. But at that second death, those IRA assets are going to get taxed very heavily. And we've got an example I'll show you real quick here as we close out. Assets, go back one more, Angela, I'm sorry. Assets like your home, personal stocks and bonds you own, mutual funds, cash, those assets when you die get a step up in basis. So not to get too technical, but if you bought something for $100,000 and when you die it's worth $500,000, that gain, that $400,000 of gain is taxable in some scenarios. At death, you get a step up in basis to the $500,000 in that example, so heirs can sell that property without paying any taxes. So just think of Shelbyville and the farms that I pass when I come in. There are a lot of farmers that kind of get caught in that category of they've inherited land, it's low cost, it's a low basis, and for them to sell it, they'd have to sell other things, but it's too onerous because of the capital gain tax. So it's not uncommon for us to do estate planning with someone that looks like a very, very, very wealthy person on paper. They're land rich, but they're cash poor because they can't generate income from their farm that they need for retirement, and they can't sell the farm because of the capital gain taxes. So thinking through those types of strategies, if you're a business owner and you're getting ready to sell a business, how do you think about doing that? If you started it on a shoestring and now you're selling it for a couple $1 million, that difference is capital gain and that's taxable income. And so those types of life events on big assets, thinking through how you plan for those, and especially at death, if you go back to our 3 boxes and think about heirs, charity, or government, ideal assets to send to charity. If you say, I'd like 10% of my estate to go to charity, we would immediately focus on IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, and the next couple slides will show you why here. Because those other assets will get a step up in basis. And so our planning process, we start with this idea of a values-based questionnaire, and I mentioned that earlier. What's important to you? What did your parents teach you about money? What did your grandparents teach you about money? What do you want to teach your kids about money? And what are your goals? More the why behind the how. Next one. And then the outcome of that is what we call a statement of values and objectives. We kind of repeat back those answers. It's not a legal document, but it's a 2-page document where we spell back for you, kind of this, why are we doing what we're doing? Next. And then we gather information about your estate, very similar, like a PFS for the bank, or if you use Quicken or just balance sheet type items. And then we bring recommendations to the table. And this is an example of how we would run some side-by-side comparisons. And this is, kind of getting into the heart of it here, really, if it's possible to read that, is we have a proprietary Excel spreadsheet we use for estate planning. At the end of this page, everything flows into one of those 3 buckets: heirs, charity, or government. In this example, heirs are getting about $1.8 million. Current plan doesn't have anything for charity. They've got about $1.2 million in taxes. So out of a little over $3 million estate, it's about 50-50. Not quite 50-50, but close. With some simple planning, it's possible in that right-hand corner to pass even more to heirs, now make a sizable gift at the second death to charity, and cut in half what's going to Uncle Sam. And this is, sometimes it's just very simple planning. It may not even require an attorney. It may be a beneficiary designation of some sort that could accomplish some of these goals. And so that's how we try to help people understand the impact. And I've kind of joked that I think the most what if scenarios we've run going through this process is about a dozen. I had an engineer I worked with that really wanted to, he kind of put it to us, and we looked at a number of different options, and that was perfectly fine, because what happened is we ran a number of different scenarios and we quickly eliminated some just by looking at the numbers. And so there's a lot of power in just being able to eliminate bad choices. And eventually we arrived at what is our plan. And then one of the big things that we stress when we get to this point in the planning is, okay, this is what we want to do, but let's talk about, what is the flexibility that we have in this plan if we need to make adjustments. If, we just set up our plan and now we're going through a presidential year and they completely change the rules on us, how flexible is our plan? And so, we place a premium on flexibility when we provide recommendations to the people we work with. All right, and so the next step, and I wanted to come back to that probate, because one of the things I wanted to talk about real quickly was a simple strategy of naming your IRA as the beneficiary of your estate plan, or as the charity as a beneficiary of your IRA can be a great way, when you think of those boxes with the cross arrows, directing those types of assets to charity, and the other assets that get a step up in basis to heirs is a very efficient way that doesn't take a lot of time and money with an estate planning attorney, or a lot of effort, and it's flexible. You can literally change it the next day by filling out a new form. Those are simple strategies, and for some people, excuse me, their IRAs are some of their largest assets. So if you think about it, most people think about their wills and trusts and different things, and those are important documents, but your beneficiary form may be your most important estate planning document. And so the next step with all of this is obviously just to contact Angela. Excuse me. I think is that all we had, Angela? I'm trying to think. Yeah. Oh, there's yeah. Is it?
Yep, that's the end. It's a good opportunity now if you have some questions you want to ask, or if anything that you might like to ask, or anything like that. I'm trying to stop sharing. I'm kind of scared. I'm not 100%. There we go. There.
Yeah.
If you have any questions or anything that Brian didn't cover that you were curious about, this is a good time to ask.
So, Angela, to contact you to make an appointment, or contact Brian, or
Contact me, and I have his schedule, and I have I can. His next visit will be October 20th. I believe that's a Tuesday. And the first meeting, Brian calls it hug and howdy time. It's just an opportunity to talk a little bit more. You've learned a lot tonight, so you probably wouldn't have to do as much of that. He gives you your homework, the values-based questionnaire, so you can get ready for your next time. And it's real easy. It's real easy. Mm-hmm. But I can sign you.
And so we just recently redid our will. Is while this stuff is going on, is that a good time to do this, or kind of wait a while until you think you've got all your changes made to take a look at this, or what would you suggest?
We normally suggest, we've had a number of attorneys go through the program, a number of CPAs, financial advisors. You heard from a couple. Great that you have done that planning and updated your wills. I would encourage you, if you've got an interest, use us as a second opinion. There's no cost, there's no obligation. We're happy to look at it. We look at things with just a little bit different lens than most attorneys, and it's not a knock on attorneys by any means. It's just we're bringing in that philanthropic angle as a way to reduce taxes and achieve goals. And again, we're happy to just to be a sounding board. We've had a number of people we've worked with where they've come in and after one meeting, great job. Let's just tweak this here or there. For the most part, it's good, and we'll be quick to tell you that as well.
If you're like in the middle of it, I would recommend coming in or talking with Brian before you finalize things. Do you think? Does that make sense, Brian?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that you don't have to go back and redo a lot.
Gotcha. Okay. And other than that, I just want to say thank you very much. It was nice of you to go ahead and bring the boxes. When you said you bring me a bottle of wine, I realized I had no idea that you were talking about a big bottle of wine here. I just thought you were talking about a little.
Oh, I got a little.
So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
That's great.
I did, guys. Anybody else?
We got shorted, Greg. We just got a regular little bottle.
I'm sorry. Maybe I shouldn't have shown everyone that. I'm sorry. You always said that I was her favorite, so yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt this, Bob Solmeyer, but
Hey, Bob.
you gave us 2 bottles of wine, and Judy drank her bottle, and now she's taking a nap. I'm kidding. It was very nice of you to invite us, and it was very interesting and to listen, and we're going to think about it.
Okay.
But I'm going to go.
I think he's over
She's
here.
had so much wine, I'm going to go chase her around the room a couple of times. That's all I'm going to do. But anyway, but thank you very much. We enjoyed it.
I
And,
was delighted that you wanted to come. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well,
John and Susie, it's Andrea Golden. How are you?
hey, hi, Andrea.
Yeah, I don't do camera out here in the boondocks because you can't get bandwidth, but just wanted to say thank you to the Hooters.
Andrea just got elected to the foundation board. So thanks for coming. You have a question?
Yes, that's very interesting and a lot to think about because as Brian said, we have basic things kind of outlined and we do have a financial planner, but not anything that kind of encompasses some of the things that he was talking about. So I may have to jump on his schedule.
Yeah, it's worthwhile. I've brought Rick to do it, kicking and screaming. He was not interested. And it's, you have to do this for my work. I can't do it by myself. And he came and I think he kind of liked it. He liked that Brian told him that we had planned well for retirement, that we were on the right track. And that's been all Rick's doing. I'm kind of bad about that. And so he was real pleased by that. And we learned how to use our retirement assets. I wanted to do some things charitably, and I just didn't think we were going to ever have enough to really do anything significant or something that I really would feel good about. But we can do a couple things, and I was real excited about that. And we had a couple, I like to tell people, a couple that came in. When they came in person, I like to meet people in the lobby and then take them back to Brian. And then as they leave, walk them out. And their first visit, the wife was kind of, I could tell she was doing it, but she did not really want to. And she was polite, but she was pretty sure I was trying to get in their pocket. And by the last meeting, she came out, her eyes were twinkling, and she had a little skip in her step. Brian had pointed some things out for her that she could do, and there were some things that she cared about deeply. And she was really delighted that she was going to be able to leave something behind and help those organizations. So it's worthwhile. You get a plan that you feel like really talks about you and what you like, and it's going to take care of the things that you're concerned about after you're gone. And I foresee we'll be working with Brian on this for a long time. So if things change for you, you can always come back and talk with him some more about what you might like to do. So it's
my husband loves bourbon, so that's probably a good sell. He's not a wine drinker, he's bourbon, so. Now, like I talked with Angela, like I didn't foresee myself staying in Shelby County, but that's just the way life went. But to be able to take some of the resources and have maybe the opportunity to get back, just because I'm in medicine, the freestanding hospitals are few and far between that are doing a good job. So to have major health partners still surviving and thriving is a wonderful thing, and then offering services is fantastic. So
Thank you.
it's really cool. So
Yeah.
and she brought me a beautiful 2 boxes of cheese. So I got 2 boxes of cheese and a little bottle of wine.
I thought you might have some helpers that would want to in on your cheese.
Yeah, we had a lot of cracker eaters, and all the salamis were gone. Very quick.
Andrea, it's good to hear your voice.
You too. You too. I miss my food family. So
No, it's been a long time.
I know. I think this weekend I may go see Katie's new house.
Oh, you just wait. Woo.
Yeah, I can't. I'm trying to convince Bob and Lynn to come with me, but I think they're going to pass. But so yeah, I'm going to be road tripping, which I never do.
Yeah.
By yourself? Are you going by yourself?
I'm going to take one of the boys.
Okay.
I'm just going to leave Austin free, so they'll be fine.
Hope
And
that-
2 dogs.
Yeah, you'll have fun. That'll be
Good.
good.
Well, this is really great. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it.
Well, sure.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay. All right. Thanks for coming. And
Thank you. Have a good evening.
call me anytime. And we can, if you're interested in getting things set up, we'll do that. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Angela.
Have a good evening. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thanks for the treat. Bye.
Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Oops.